So today, I'm going to share 3 powerful takeaways to help you let go of the past and to create a future filled with love, clarity, and peace. Making room for all of that. So the first point I want to make amongst the 3 is understanding why letting go is hard. And the key insight that I want to leave you with is that holding on to hurt is most often tied to fear. Fear of being vulnerable again. Vulnerable to what? Vulnerable to the same pain that you couldn't stand. Vulnerable to repeating the mistakes that either you make or the other person makes. Getting control over them so that they don't make that mistakes. Why? So you don't have to experience that pain again. Fear of losing that control. Our minds, because we are primal beings, our minds are wired for protection, for protecting ourselves physically. Like if somebody just throws a ball at me right now, I'm instinctively, even though I'm speaking to you right now, I would instinctively know to lift my hands up to protect myself. So we are wired to protect ourselves physically and emotionally. And it has to be that we at some point understand that we are burning in the fire, that we are churning, we are burning, we are dying and suffocating under the weight of what we don't let go of. We have to, the moving from the survival part, which we are so grateful for, because if we didn't have that, God knows what would happen to us. We would definitely not be in this session listening to this video, this talk. So grateful to the survival part of it, but shifting from the survival to thriving is a conscious decision that all of us must make. And it is the rite of passage for every person who is an adult to bring themselves this level of emotional maturity. It is emotional immaturity. I have been plenty emotionally immature, as I say this myself, where if something happens, action, reaction, being this reactive lizard, having the lizard brain, like, which is undeveloped. As soon as an action happens, reaction happens. No, when an action happens, bringing it to giving it a space in between so that you can respond. A response has in it insight of who you are, what you want to create and experience. Whereas when you react, the only thing that's king in a reaction is who and what you are reacting to. So you want to bring yourself in there by responding, by pausing to respond. You need the pause in order to respond. But this shift has got to be a conscious shift in your mind. It's not automatic. If you leave things at default, the default is set to survival. You want to override the default and practice being in survival so many times that that becomes your new default. And that is the invitation that I give you right now. And all of us, every single one of us has a birthright to move into thriving. That is the idea of surviving, is that you leave that realm. You have that, you practice that, you've got it in your pocket if you need it, but you don't live here in survival. You live there in thriving. And if you need surviving, it's in your back pocket too, because you've practiced it in your earlier way of being. But this evolution is your right, and it is your responsibility. So my first takeaway for you is acknowledge the fear that is underneath the pain. Acknowledge the fear that is holding you in the pain. Acknowledge the fear that keeps you in the pain. Acknowledge the fear that doesn't allow you to let go. Acknowledge the fear that keeps you reeled in. Acknowledge the fear that in the end ends up evoking more fear. Acknowledge it. Acknowledging it allows it to release. People, one of the biggest mistakes of simple psychology, which is why you will go to therapy for 12 years and it won't work if people are using simple psychology there, is that, oh, get against the fear that it is bad and wrong, your ego is bad and wrong. And it is like fixing a problem while creating a new one. And what I'm telling you is required is that you come into compassion with your fear, that you move towards it, and you don't think that the fear and the fear of letting go is the problem, that it is actually the solution. It is not standing in the way, it is the way. Walking towards the fear is with loving, with compassion, coming to it from a different place is going to release you. It is not here to bind you. When you identify the fear driving your inability to let go, you can begin to address it directly. Just by acknowledging it and coming towards it with compassion will heal it. Why? Because healing is the act of loving the parts inside you that hurt. Wait, but how does fear hurt? Because underneath every fear is hurt. Here are parts of psychology that are black and white. Underneath every fear is hurt and pain that hasn't been resolved yet. You want to heal the fear, you want to heal the anger. The place to go is to heal the hurt that's underneath it. So that's the first point. First point is acknowledge the fear. And the takeaway that I want you to take from this is acknowledging the fear is going to release you. The second point I'm going to make with you is to reframe your story. We're not just hurt by what happens to us. We're hurt by the stories we tell ourselves about what happened to us. We're hurt by the judgments we make about what happened to us. For example, instead of I was betrayed, try reframing it to I learned who I can trust and how to set boundaries. Reframe it as that betrayal opened my eyes to where I want to be loyal to myself. Anybody who has a curriculum where betrayal keeps showing up as their biggest pain throughout their lives, what their life is trying to teach them and the way to overcome and heal that curriculum of repeating betrayal is going to be black and white right there. Be loyal to yourself. I can do many things. I just can't not be loyal to myself. So if somebody has a curriculum where they are neglected, right away, the remedy to overcome this repeated curriculum is to never ignore themselves, is to totally and completely see and witness themselves, to witness all of themselves, not just the parts that they feel might be helpful and good to them, but the parts that they may deem previously as wrong or bad, to love them and to come into compassion with them too. If you have a curriculum where you have been one after another felt invisible, you make sure that you see yourself. If you have a curriculum where you felt powerless, you make sure that you lean into your power, that you empower yourself. Whatever you have, you give yourself what you were hoping another person, another situation, another thing would give you. You be for yourself that which you want other things and situations to be for you. You do that, you fulfill that need so that you can still go out and have relationships with people, bring projects into life, but you don't do any of that from a place of need, from a place of neediness and stickiness and weight. You do it from the lightness of I want to. I don't need to, but I want to. And that's when you bring things into the world in a way where you don't get hurt. So that is my step for you. And I have a technique for you. I have a 3-step reframing process for you. Step number 1 is identify the story you've been telling yourself. It's a very simple technique. Identify the story. Sometimes we don't want to write that story down. Sometimes we don't want to admit that we have this story. Please write it down because things fester in the darkness of leaving it obscure, not bringing it forward. Sometimes I would think that if I really told myself what I think about myself, I'm going to cry, or I'm going to stay stuck here, or I'm reinforcing it. No. If you want to heal something, bring it forward, take it out of the shame, take it out of the basement, give it light, because it grows there. In the shame and the blame and the darkness and the basement, it grows there. So bring it out, identify the story, ask yourself question, is this story helping me come closer to what I want, or is it taking me away from what I want? Is this story freeing me, or is it keeping me stuck? It's a very important question to ask, because whatever you're going to do next, this second question is going to allow you to have a buy-in in what you're about to do next. So when you have answered the second question, step 3 is going to be that you're going to replace the story that is keeping you away from what you want, keeping you stuck in what you don't want to be stuck in, to be freed from what you don't want to be stuck in, and with everything you do, headed towards what you want. So when I started to reframe my pain, I started to understand that what I'm doing is hurting me. And I would have loved, I waited and I waited and I waited for this feeling to go away, for my desire to not want to get comfort from the control, from continuing to keep the fire churning. But what I ended up doing would really help me, and I invite you to, is that I crowded it out. I crowded out that desire for getting safety through control that was completely conditional, and it was not real control. It was this kind of solution that only was another problem. The way I did that is I started to have honor and care and regard for myself. And I did it by, I would select a person in my mind that I absolutely loved and I cared for. And I would say, would I do this to them? And I would say, no, I wouldn't. And so I started to not accept for myself that which I would not accept for the people and things and situations that I loved. And so when I started treating myself in micro moments as the way I treat the people that I love, I ended up caring for myself and having so much regard for myself that I noticed that I no longer wanted to keep myself burning, churning, weighed down, stuck, locked in, reeled into things that are so hurtful for me. I knew I wouldn't do that to people I love, so I was able to take myself out of it. It became a natural process. It was a natural progression of treating somebody that I care about, because this is what I would do with them as well. So my second takeaway for you is that your story shapes your experience. You don't like your experience? Okay, change your story. And changing your story is going to be the thing that changes your life. So let me go over the 3 points that I've made with you. Number 1, understand why letting go is hard. Number 2 is reframe your story. And the last point that I want to make with you is forgive without conditions. Forgive for the sake of your freedom. True forgiveness, the forgiveness that is able to release you. Forgiveness that is able to release you is always done with an intention of personal freedom. If you forgive someone or something that happened because they asked you nicely, because you just couldn't say no, because you're hoping that type of forgiveness, any forgiveness that is not rooted in an intention of completely freeing yourself from the weight of non-forgiveness, is ultimately going to turn into a transaction. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you forgive somebody because they were nice, they were saying sorry so nicely, they did A, B, and C for you, so you just forgave them. You didn't forgive them for the reason that I'm saying it, which is personal freedom. You forgave them because of who they are. Well, right away, Simultaneously, it'll go into a transaction format. And at some point, you will, when maybe they don't forgive you for something you did that was maybe less than what they did, you might get upset. Or if they turn their back on you, or if they do something opposite to you, or they hurt you, you're going to get hurt. And if you see forgiveness as a place for personal freedom, you will do it without any attachment to receiving anything more than the right to be you. Holding on to anger or resentment keeps you tied to the person and the situation. So the most important function of forgiveness is to release you and to free you for what? So that you can live more deeply and more fully into the soul that you are, into the strength, into the light that you can feel inside you. Forgiveness, I want to be very clear. I want to bust some myths about forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened, excusing what happened, condoning what happened. It just means releasing its power over you. It just means freedom from what is no longer serving you. So let me give you a practical exercise for forgiveness. I'm going to call it the forgiveness letter. In that letter, as you write it, briefly explain that what is it that you're releasing? What is it that you're bottling up? And you might write this letter like this. Hi, I'm letting go of the pain that I've been holding myself in. This is a letter that you'd write to yourself, or you'd write the letter to the person you're releasing. You'll say, dear, whatever person you are, I'm letting you go of the pain you caused me because I deserve to be free. It's something like that. So the third takeaway is forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for personal freedom. It's not for other people. So the first conclusion that I would like for you to come to, and I want you to take away from this, the points that I want you to take home, what I want you to have in your mind as you leave this is, number one, acknowledge the fear underneath the pain so that you can heal what needs to be healed at the root. Number two, reframe your story to empower yourself. If you don't like your story, please take the time to learn what the story is and to see what it's doing to you and to change it. Number three, forgive whoever is or whatever is holding you back so that you can free yourself. Forgive to free yourself, not to excuse the other person. I want you to imagine that what your life could look like if you weren't carrying the weight and the burn of the past hurt. And I would love to invite you to take one of these three steps today. As Nelson Mandela says, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So now I'm going to pause for you guys to bring up any questions that you might have. One of the questions that I'll pose to you if you want to engage is that what is one thing you're holding on to that if you were to let that go, that you would feel a surge of freedom? My question to you is, what is one thing you are willing to release that is going to give you a surge of freedom? Freedom to be who you are, freedom to live into yourself.